Hello, my name is Catherine Yanowski, and today I'm going to be talking about protesting and civil rights reform. Okay, to start, the fight for civil rights in a nutshell. The world wouldn't be what it is today if it weren't for civil rights activists, and that includes grassroots civil rights activists and individuals in the federal government who fought for civil rights. They used demonstrations, sit-ins, marches, legislation, collection of the facts to determine whether injustices are alive, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action, all to achieve civil rights. And I took that quote from the primary document, Letter from Birmingham Jail, in which Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about the necessity that was civil rights, and that still is civil rights. This photo here depicts civil rights activists protesting at the Alabama State Capitol. Again, it was all different types of people who were fighting for equality, which can be seen in this photo. Grassroots civil rights activists, who were they? These were people who had experienced discrimination firsthand a lot of the time, and they didn't necessarily have a platform because of the discrimination that they faced, but they created a platform. They fought for their voices to be heard. They used direct action to challenge the system. And I took that quote from the primary document, Lessons of Martin Luther King Jr. And in this photo here, you can see civil rights activists marching on Washington to make a change. Despite the backlash that they faced, they fought for a change. They fought to have their voices heard. Factors, perspectives, and goals of the civil rights activists. Minorities in America have faced discrimination since the beginning, really, since the beginning of the country, since the beginning of America. But these people, these grassroots civil rights activists fought to make a change. They knew that discrimination on the basis of education, jobs, healthcare, etc., was degrading, dehumanizing, immoral, unjust, indefensible, infuriating, incapable of producing societal turmoil. I took that quote from the primary document, the bottom of the economic totem pole, African American women in the workplace. And in that document, it spoke of how civil rights was necessary for multiple different reasons. And the goals of these civil rights activists were freedom, equal employment, decent housing, equal education, an end to violence, an end to police brutality, and peace. And as you can see here, they were often faced with violence. This photo shows the damage done by white protesters who planted a bomb in Birmingham in attempts to fight back against the civil rights movement. But again, despite the backlash and violence that these civil rights activists, these grassroots civil rights activists faced, they kept fighting to have their voices heard and to make a change. Okay, civil rights reformers in the federal government, who were they? These were people in positions of power who worked together either directly or indirectly with grassroots civil rights activists. They fought to make a change, but at the same time, they fought to keep the country peaceful. They fought to keep everybody happy. Some of the most notable civil rights reformers in the federal government include people like Lyndon B. Johnson and John F. Kennedy. And in regards to the progressive policies that grassroots civil rights activists wanted, these officials in the federal government tried to support them all. And I took that from the primary document reporting LBJ and MLK, in which Lyndon B. Johnson and Martin Luther King Jr. sort of vowed to work together. And you can see here, they were trying to work together. As you can see, Lyndon B. Johnson handing Martin Luther King Jr. one of the pens used in the signing of the Voting Rights Act. So these reformers in the federal government fought with the civil rights activists, the grassroots civil rights activists. They used their platform for those who didn't have one. So again, they had more of a platform due to their role in the federal government. And they saw the horrors, the discrimination, they saw it happening, and they fought to end that. But at the same time, they often faced backlash from fellow government officials and from citizens who were against civil rights. And again, they had to make sure to keep the country peaceful. They couldn't go and make these huge changes right away or without warning or anything, because that could lead to turmoil. And you can see here, I have from the primary document reporting conversation with James Eastland. Lyndon B. Johnson, he was speaking to James Eastland in regards to the Mississippi burnings. And he was asking Eastland for advice, and he was saying things like, may set a bad precedent if he were to meet with the parents of the civil rights activists who had been murdered in the Mississippi burnings. And whether or not Lyndon B. Johnson actually felt this way, I don't believe that he did, but I believe that he was trying to ensure that people like Eastland, who were against civil rights, who were against this equality, I think that he was trying to make sure that they knew that he was hearing their voices, he was hearing their protests, their fight, but he was going to keep fighting for civil rights. And that's how many of the federal government officials were. They weren't only trying to achieve civil rights for all, they were also trying to keep their constituents and citizens happy and peaceful while still working towards civil rights. And in this photo here, you can see Lyndon B. Johnson signing the Civil Rights Bill surrounded by members of Congress. Okay, so who is most responsible for civil rights? In my opinion, I believe that grassroots civil rights activists are more responsible for civil rights because they were the ones who began the fight for equality. Even though they didn't have a platform or a voice originally, they fought for one. They fought to have their voices heard because they knew that America was moving towards two societies, separate and unequal. And they fought to end that. Despite the backlash and violence thrown their way, their courage prevailed. Grassroots civil rights activists, in my opinion, did more because they were the ones who made the lasting impact. Even though they didn't personally sign the legislation, they're the ones who called for it originally. And here you can see grassroots civil rights activists marching to make a change on June 18th, 1968. And here is my annotated bibliography of my sources.